We are going to be adding roles to our project. Unfortunately, identity does not come with the capability to support roles. They have a user role table, but they have no controllers or views for roles. So we actually have to create them ourselves. So what we're going to do is create a role controller, and I have the code for that. And this controller is going to go with our other controllers. So we are going to add a controller here. We're going to do an empty one because I have code for you. And it's going to be called role controller. And I'm going to center click this. So here is the code. And you can see that this is a controller class derived from controller. We have an identity role class that we are using for this. And basically, we've got an index action method where it's going to take all of the roles that exist and put them in a list and send it to a view that's going to display those roles. And it's also going to allow us to create new roles. Okay, so that's basically what's going on in here. Okay, it's basically going to show us what roles exist and allow us to add new ones. So just kind of a basic little controller. Now, could we make it do more? Could we do deletes? Yeah, we could, but for this particular assignment, just being able to see them and create them is good enough. Okay, so this is our controller. And now we need to create a couple views, right? Because we have an index action method and a create action method. So we need corresponding views for those. And we also need a folder called role, because that does not exist. So we're going to right click on views, add new folder. And we're going to call it role. Inside role, we're going to do two views. The first one is going to be called index, and I have code for you, so you're going to pick empty. Okay, so index is what it's showing, so I'm going to click add. And then the second view is going to be called create. That's also going to be empty. And then we're going to come back over here. And I'm going to center click on index and create. So here is my index view. It doesn't do a whole lot. It's basically going to display the ID associated with the role and the name. That's it. So let me come over here, go to my index view and paste. And then for create, I basically have a little form, and the form has one input box for name because ID is automatically generated. So this is going to be used to add user roles. And we're going to be adding user roles to a table that was created when we used update database on application DB context. So let's come over here. Let me make sure I copied. And we'll go over into create, paste that, and let me quick do a build here. So we're about halfway there, okay? So we've got now the capability to add user roles and see the roles that are there. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. But now what we want is to kind of add the user roles to the registration page. Because when they register, or when you use the page, we want to be able to say what role that user has. So we are going to be modifying a couple of the pages that were generated by that scaffolding that we added earlier. So we're going to modify register.cshtml.cs and register.cshtml. So let me close. I've got way too much open here. And I'm going to center click on both of those. And where these are located, they are way up under areas. And you'll probably have to expand out identity and expand out count. And what you're going to see is register.cshtml. So you actually have to expand that, and then you're going to see registered.cshtml.cs. So that's the first one we're going to change. And so what I decided here was the easiest way for you guys to do this is just to Control A, select everything. Come over here and Control A and Control V to paste. Now, what I tried to do, oops, doesn't look like it selected everything. We'll try that again. Control C. Now it's got everything. So what I tried to do in here is put comments where code was added. So you can see added for roles, added for roles, added for roles. So as you go through here to see what's changed, you can see that we had to add the role manager here. And this is to the registration section. And then we had to add it down here. And we had to add the role manager here as well. And here we added name. And when we use roles, they have IDs and they have names. Okay, so this refers to the name associated with the roles that we are going to be using. Here, this little on get, it's going to basically retrieve all the roles and store them in view data. So this would be whatever is in the database table. And you can kind of follow along here, look for the comments where it says added for roles, and you can see exactly what changed. This section I commented out because it had to be changed. Okay, and again, they were changed for the user roles that we are working with. So I'm going to save that. And then we also need to change register.cshtml, which is a view. And again, I think it's easiest just to copy and paste everything. Although in this, there's only two areas that changed. And you can see I put in an HTML comment. The one area was here. Okay, so basically, we're pulling in a list of roles. And then down here, this is a drop-down list that's going to display the different roles. And this is the registration page. So this is where you're entering when you click register. This is the page that displays. So we had to add the user roles to that page. So I'm going to run a build. And that brings me down to configure services. So this also needs to change. Your configure services should match mine, but you can see I commented code out. So you can just kind of omit that. If you have difficulties typing this correctly, I did include my startup. Okay, so you can copy paste if you have a lot of trouble getting it in correctly. And basically what got adjusted here is we had to add identity role to add identity. And the add identity changed a little bit because it used to be add default identity. Okay, so that changed a little bit. We have add default UI and we have add default token providers, all because we're using identity role. Then we have add authorization options. And so basically in here, we are indicating what our user roles are. And they basically what they're able to do. So we have a read policy and a write policy. Obviously, they do exactly what they say. For read policy, we are allowing administrators, managers, and users, but for write policy, it's administrators and managers only. Okay, so those are the changes that we made. And let's save all and run a build. Now, this next step is super important because we want to run the app. And this is where we're actually going to add our roles. And we don't have a menu item for adding roles right now. Okay, so what we have to do up here is, you can see I've done this before, enter role, because it's the role controller, and we want to create. Okay, and so the first role that we're going to create is administrator. I want to make sure you spell it right. Okay, and you can see I've got them in here already. So what you're going to have to do is do create. You're going to have to create user. And then you'll have to create manager. Those are the three that you need to use. Back to list takes you and it shows you the three. Okay, so once you've done that, you can exit out of here. You're going to go back into your app and you're going to open up your role controller. And then you're going to add the authorization policy to the index and create. So for index, that was our read policy, right? So we're going to say authorize policy equals, I always have this problem. And then we'll copy. And this one is going to be write policy. And it looks like we need the authorize. Let's see, I'm missing a using directive. And policy should be capitalized here. All right, so now I've got all of that in there. And so let me run another build. And so now what we need to do is you need to make sure you have a user that is an administrator, one that's a manager, and one that is a user. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, if you're logged into an account, you're going to want to go in and manage the account you created earlier, go to personal data and delete it. Oops, got to put in my password. Then we're going to create a new account. So you can use that same email. And then you can see we can pick our role down here. Whoop. Okay, so I added an administrator, and now I need to also add a user and a manager. I should do an easier password. And he'll be the manager. Okie doke. So now I have my 3 accounts. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to exit out of the app, and our next step is going to be to add roles to our authorize attribute.